Hi everybody, welcome back to AP Psychology with me, Miss Baines, your teacher, where you are able to pause me and rewind me as I deliver you your latest content. So go ahead and grab those square tip colored markers, a nice comfy space in which to work, and of course don't forget your ever important binder notes that go in lockstep order with this video, which is Unit 8, Video 6, the Somatic Symptom Disorders, pages 12 and 13 of your Unit 8 binder notes. I'll see you on the other side. Hello, and welcome back to another set of our notes in the Clinical Psychology unit of AP Psychology. As you can see from today's learning targets, we're going to be discussing somatic symptom disorders. Be sure to keep up with me by filling in your binder notes on pages 12 and 13. Okay, so let's get to it and dive right in. So as we can recall from the other units, the word soma means of the body, right? Therefore, it makes sense that the somatic system disorders are all about things that are characterized by physical symptoms that seem to suggest a physical disorder is taking place. The root word here is soma, right? And we learned back in biological basis unit that soma is also called the cell body. Somatosensory cortex in our brain is the motor cortex that controls the senses of our body, right? So soma means body, essentially. There's no physical cause of the somatic system disorder. It's the physical existing symptoms where there is evidence to suggest that the symptoms are linked to psychological factors. So what this means is that there's some sort of trauma or stress-induced scenario that causes the person's brain to cause actual physical symptoms to happen when there is no physical or biological root to the problem. So this psychological disorder then manifests itself into physical. Now, there's a disorder that is just called somatic symptom disorder, but then there are two kinds of subcategories of other disorders. One is called conversion disorder, and one is called illness anxiety disorder. Other disorders start with Munchausen syndrome, but Munchausen syndrome by proxy and Ganser syndrome. These are both from the same category under somatic symptom disorders, but here's the thing. These are called fictitious disorders, meaning false or feigned or fake disorders. So let's take Munchausen syndrome for instance. This is the intense preoccupation with essentially making yourself mentally or physically ill. Okay, so Munchausen syndrome is where someone will debilitate themselves in a way that makes them either physically and mentally, but mostly physically, impaired in some way. Munchausen syndrome by proxy is where you do this to someone else, like a mother does to their child, right? So they're in proximity to this other person. And oftentimes you will see this with mothers who make their children ill in order to gain sympathy. Okay, an example of this, we're gonna go throwback for the 90s for a second, is this movie called The Sixth Sense. There's a little girl under the bed that scares the out of everyone. This little dead girl living under the bed, and this other boy can see dead people, so she gets him to see at her funeral a VHS tape of the little girl under the bed who makes a video of her mom putting bleach, I think it was, into her soup to make her super sick and have all these symptoms for a really long time, and eventually killing the little girl.
Don't go home, okay?
I definitely won't.
dancing with my friends. Oh, well, how about this? We can dance for a little bit, and if you don't like the way I dance, you can kick me. Oh, okay then.
Time for lunch, Kira.
I'm feeling much better now.
That's so great, honey. It's time for your food.
Can I go outside and eat this?
Oh, I don't know. You know how you get sick in the afternoons. Don't say that it tastes funny, you know. I don't like to hear that. Sammy's mom called.
You were keeping her sick.
That's Munchausen's by proxy. Ganser syndrome being very similar, but it's essentially faking a physical or mental disorder, not necessarily making yourself impaired in some way. But again, these are all fictitious disorders because they are faked or false. A lot of people have trouble with understanding how they can do this. Well, the lying here, well, here's my question. If a person is going to go so far as to inject feces into their blood in order to make them sick, as an example of what somebody might do when they have Munchausen syndrome, it can be distressful or dysfunctional, incredibly deviant and unjustified. Of course, a disorder because it meets those 4 Ds, right? If you don't know what I'm talking about with the 4 Ds, go back to your first Intro to Disorders video. In the treatment of psychology, we know that when we tag a mental disorder, you really want to make sure that you bring it back to the somatic symptom disorder. With conversion disorders, it's also called functional neurological symptom disorder, and there's this unexplained symptoms or deficits affecting the voluntary motor or sensory functioning, and that suggests a medical condition, but no medical condition actually exists. It's the onset, usually after a stressful or traumatic event, that some common symptoms physically occur, or sensory functioning, right? Motor or fit sensory functionings that include paralysis, right? It could be a paralysis of, say, your right arm or your hand. It could be a paralysis of your legs that you can't walk. You can't move anything from the waist down, right? Blindness, pretending that you're blind is a big one, or completely getting deaf ears, having difficulty walking, or not being able to lift your arm to throw a ball. These are all symptoms where there is anatomically nothing wrong. The symptoms are anatomically impossible. For instance, what we call glove anesthesia, inability to feel your hand, your own hand, yet they have the sensation in their arm, right? There's nothing that's going to cut off the sensation from here down, right? It comes from the spine. So it's got to be that way, and it's not anatomically possible for that to be happening. One of the most significant indicators of conversion disorder is beautiful indifference. The person has an extreme anxiety in other areas of their life, but a lack of concern about what appears to be an incapacitating physical ailment. That's pretty telling of this disorder, right? So such symptoms allow for the individual to escape from their current or frustrating or stressful situations in life, and sometimes it leads to a secondary game, such as attention or affection. So another disorder that we'll talk about is illness anxiety disorder. This is the preoccupation with the idea that somebody has or might have a serious disease or ailment, along with misinterpretations of bodily symptoms or functioning. So there's a kind of two prongs to this one. It's the fear, right? The preoccupation with the fear, almost like a phobia, and a level of fear that they're going to have this disease or get a disease. But then there's a misinterpretation of things happening in the bodily symptoms that indicate that they do have the one thing that they're preoccupied with. And that one thing may be the one thing that shifts it, right? It doesn't have to be just one thing, like a certain type of brain cancer or a tumor, right? It can shift and be any or all of those things. So 3 major characteristics of this one is the physiological arousal, meaning worry or anxiousness, right? They often have sleep disturbances surrounding that preoccupation. There's bodily focus, so there's close monitoring of their bodily features, preoccupied with those physical complaints that are linked to this preoccupation. And then the behaviors are designed to avoid or check for physical illnesses. So they avoid those who have the disease, right? I'm not going to go to a hospital where someone may have Ebola or something like that, right? Why would I go to a hospital where I can get this disease? They engage in repeated self-inspections and medical consultations. They will go to multiple doctors. Really, no matter what they say, whether they have a confirmed diagnosis or not, may be more likely to be confirmed or rejection. They're going to keep going until they find a doctor who will believe them. So some explanations for conversion disorder are the conversion episodes. They almost nearly always are triggered by stressful events or an emotional conflict. We find that Easterners and women of all cultures are more vulnerable to have this disorder. So let me give you an example of this one. A high school or college football player, an athlete of some sort who has, say, the biggest game of his or her life coming up, state championships, nationals, right? A lot of recruiters are going to be at the game. And let's just say that it's the starting quarterback in a football game. And this stressful incident, you could say, if someone were not to be able to handle it, they suddenly have paralysis of his throwing arm, right? So it's very much tied to the incident that's causing the stress. And then the illness, anxiety disorder, creeps in to be able to take away that one skill that makes them the thing that they're afraid of not showing up for. Okay, there's a lot of things that have something to do with, including personality, like life experiences. And maybe there was something that just happened in their past that triggers this, and their upbringing and their inherited traits also may play a role. So that concludes our set of notes on somatic symptom disorder. I hope to see you tomorrow. That's all now. Bye now.